Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Micks Mowers. And today's episode we're going to be doing another subscriber request video. They're coming through quite thick and fast at the moment, and as I say, there's lots of videos on these particular topics. They're all out there on YouTube already, so why watch mine, right? But these are what my subscribers have asked me to do, so therefore I'm going to do it. This video is on how to winterize your two-stroke machine, whether it be a leaf blower, a strimmer, a trimmer, a weed eater, a weed whacker, whatever it is you want to call them. They're all pretty much the same. This is how to winterize those type of machines. And this, again, this subject is open to interpretation dependent on where you live, or what type of fuels you have, if you use additives, stabilizers, all that sort of good stuff. So there are an option of what to do, and you have to sort of work that out for yourself, what works best for you, okay? This is the first time I'm watching Micks Mowers. Hit your subscribe button, whack your bell, set your notifications to all. That way you'll be told when I've done a video, or two, I'm on my Saturday night wiki live stream, which starts at 6:30 PM UK time. So without further ado, let's get down and dirty and let's try and winterize my strimmer. Okay, so here is my little trimmer. This is a free 4-in-1 multi-tool that I got from Screwfix. It's a Titan multi-tool, as I say. It comes with a strimmer, hedge cutter, all that sort of combination sort of bits and pieces. It's pretty much brand new, okay? I bought this about 2 months ago now. I've used it 2 or 3 times. It's not been started for around about 3 weeks. It's got fuel inside it. I don't use any style of additive or any type of fuel stabilizer because I run very low amounts of fuel in my two-stroke personal equipment, but I also have a very high turnover of fuel because I'm repairing and servicing lawnmowers and strimmers all the time. So my fuel is pretty much fresh all the time. The first thing I would say is that when it comes towards the winter time, and dependent on where you are in the world, whether you be in America, Australia, depending on the climate you're at, you need to just consider your ethanol status within your fuel. We don't have that sort of problem over here with the ethanol. Not yet anyway, it is coming. So you need to understand what it is you want to do. So the best advice I have is 3 top tips. 3 top tips to winterize your two-cycle, two-stroke bits of equipment. The first rule of thumb that I sort of recommend is to make sure that your fuel levels are relatively low, about 1/4 of a tank, okay? And then as the season progresses through the winter and into spring, every sort of 3 or 4 weeks, just come out to your machine, put another little bit of fuel inside there, and then just run your machine up and just keep your machine running every sort of 3 or 4 weeks, okay? Set a reminder on your calendar or on your phone or whatever you've got, and just keep running your machine throughout this sort of 2 or 3 months in the winter, although it's slightly longer in the US. You can just run your machine every 3 weeks. That's option number 1. Option number 2 would be to fill up your tank with some form of stabilization additive, and then run your machine for 3 or 4 minutes, preferably on your last use of it before the winter cuts in. And once you have finished running it with the additive inside it, because the additive must be inside the carburetor, you can then leave your machine stored in your shed as is, and just don't go back and undo that fuel cap, okay? Leave the fuel cap done up. Some additives that you can purchase online or in stores do not have an element that combats moisture, and some do. So just be mindful of what you buy. So if you do buy an additive that does not combat moisture, if you go back in halfway through the season and just undo your fuel cap, you're allowing moisture into your tank, especially in the winter months. You do it back up, and then because you have allowed moisture in, as it breaks down with the fuel vapors, you're going to be left with a quantity of water inside the tank. And I've seen throughout the years, so many, when I drain the tank out, so many tanks, you empty them out and there is an element of water in there. So obviously there are times when the additives either don't have the correct product in it that you require, or people don't use it full stop. So number 1 is just run your machine every 3 or 4 weeks. Keep topping your fuel up, make sure it's fresh and run it through. That isn't a form of winterization, but it is a form of keeping your machine going, and that's the end result, okay? Number 2 step is to add the additive into your machine and store your machine in your workshop or shed, and then don't go back to it until the summer starts or springtime starts, and leave your fuel cap done up tight and don't touch it. That's step number 2. Okay, so the third and final step is to empty your machine completely out of fuel. Now, this is quite important, is that if you run your machine completely bone dry out of fuel, ready for winterization, there is a potential risk that you could do some damage to the engine, okay? Because this engine requires fuel and oil mixture. If you run the engine completely out of oil and petrol out of a tank, it will run for a little tiny while on a very limited amount of fuel and oil, okay, as the machine starts to stop. There is a possibility you can do a very small amount of damage, okay? It's not as bad as running a machine on plain fuel, but I don't recommend running your machine right out of fuel at full throttle to make sure it's all gone. That's not what I recommend. What I recommend to empty one of these little systems out is to undo your fuel cap. And your fuel caps on different variants, the fuel cap may actually come out, okay? Take your fuel cap off and then just drain your fuel into a container. And make sure you get all of that fuel out, okay? Now with the fuel out, I'm just going to put this fuel cap back on. I don't want to lose it. And I also just want to store this petrol out the way so it doesn't get any contaminants inside it. The fuel tank's now empty, right? There's no fuel in this system. However, there is still a very, very small amount of fuel inside the carburetor. What you now want to do is on the primer bulb underneath, and you can actually see there's actually fuel inside the primer bulb just here, okay? We now want to just prime the primer bulb on your trimmer a couple of times, and that will push any excess fuel back into the tank through the return pipe, okay? There won't be a lot. Just keep priming it, and we're pushing fuel into the head, and we're pushing fuel back into the tank, okay? You can't suck anything else up. We're now getting rid of it. The fuel inside the head of a cylinder, what we can now do with that is remove the HT lead, and that's simply done just by popping up the HT lead with a device, with a screwdriver or something like that, and then get a spark plug spanner, and all we're going to do is remove the spark plug, okay? And that's done very simply, and normally most bits of kit come with a spark plug spanner, okay? We're now going to remove the spark plug. With the spark plug now removed, we've now exposed this machine to the elements, and with a bit of priming, we're now pushing any excess fuel that's in the carburetor into the throat of the carburetor, into the cylinder, and it's now going to evaporate via the cylinder head with the spark plug out. If the spark plug was in there, it wouldn't evaporate as quick. So very quickly, just take the spark plug out and let that evaporate. Leave it off for about half an hour or so. It's only a small amount of fuel, right? So it's no big deal. But with that spark plug out, that'll evaporate. So now there's no fuel in the cylinder. There's very limited fuel inside the carburetor because it all went through the throat. And now there's no fuel in the bottom of the bowl on the carburetor. Now what you want to do is bring your fuel back, and there'll be a very, very small amount of petrol, okay, which will now be returned, because it was in the pipe, will now be returned back into the fuel tank. And all we're going to do now is just take the fuel cap back out one more time, tip the device up, and there you go. Very, very small amount. Did you see that drop out? It was tiny. It was minimal. But that's the little cookie that's going to go all horrible inside your tank. Now I can see there's no fuel inside those fuel lines at all. There's nothing in there. They're completely empty. Now what I recommend to do is now just leave that machine for around about half hour, 45 minutes, okay? With the fuel cap off, just to allow for all that petrol to evaporate out of the tank and out of the cylinder. Once that's been done, you'll come back and you'll find that your fuel tank is absolutely bone dry, okay? Bone dry with no problems. There's a good time then to double check that your fuel filter is actually on the lead. If it's not, pull it out and put one on. You can then do your cap back up, put your spark plug back in, and if you're struggling to put your spark plug back in because you've got quite big fingers like me, what you can do is just get a little bit of two-stroke fuel line, if you've got it lying around, and hook it over the top of your spark plug whilst it's inside the cylinder. And with a little bit of fuel line just on top of a spark plug, what you can then do is just twist it like so. Okay, so if you do struggle, this isn't my hack. I've got this from Ken Small Engines. Just get a little tiny bit of fuel line on there, put your spark plug in, because I've got quite big hands and I struggle. And it's better than trying to get the spanner on it. Just literally get it started, and then you can just twist that, and it goes down so easy. The amount of times I've been fighting to get that in. Once that's all the way in, you can just remove that bit of fuel line, keep hold of that in your little toolbox, and then literally just nick up your your spark plug so it's tight, because we don't want to be mucking about with this next year. Do about that. Put your HT lead back on, like so. And now we have a machine which has got no fuel inside the cylinder, no fuel inside the tank, no fuel inside the carburetor. Technically, this machine should start to run pretty much as is, pretty much brand new, come springtime next year. And do you know what? We're going to test it. So in the springtime, we'll come back to this machine, we'll put some fresh fuel in, not this fuel, because this fuel's done. Dispose of that fuel via your refuge collection sites, do it properly. But mix up some brand new fresh fuel, 40:1, put it in this machine, and we'll see if it starts. So there you have it. There's how to winterize your 2-stroke, 2-cycle machines, whether it be a weed eater, a strimmer, a trimmer, a leaf blower, whatever it is you have. Anything 2-stroke, that is the best way in which I recommend to winterize your machines. 3 simple steps. Leave them running every month, 3 weeks, just go in, fresh fuel, start them up, and therefore you don't have to winterize it, so to speak. Because the idea is, the end result is to get that machine to fire in the spring. That's the idea, isn't it? So do step 1, as I just said. Step 2, you can use some form of stabilization as long as you make sure either it has a moisture additive in there which combats moisture and eats the dissolves the water, or you just put it in the tank, run the machine for 2 or 3 minutes, and then leave that tank done up and don't go back to it. Step 3 is very simple, done by draining the machine empty of any petrol, but I would recommend against running the machine out of fuel. Just empty it and do it the way that I showed you, because what you don't want to be doing is running that machine low on oil, because you could do some damage, and as the years go on, that could then cause bigger problems like piston scoring and all that sort of horrible stuff, where the machine then becomes terminal and you then can't use it. Hope you enjoy a sort of video of how to winterize your 2-stroke, 2-cycle bits of equipment. If you did, give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click your bell notification to all. That way you'll be told when I'm done a video, or 2 on my Saturday night weekly live stream, which starts at 6:30 PM UK time. Thank you very much for watching. I look forward to the next episode of Micks Mowers very, very soon. But until then, people, don't forget, more importantly, take it easy.